Welcome. Welcome to our webinar. We're so excited to have such great attendance. I am Mary Youngren. I'm the owner and president of Advent Talent Group. And we're kind of the little guy in the staffing recruiting industry. We are small, woman owned, that's me. And we just celebrated 20 years. We're in our 22nd year of business. So we're very excited about that. And because we're a boutique, focus on three specific lanes of business. We have creative and marketing, human resources, and the office/accounting lane. And we're very much a values driven company. And we have a really our number one is make a difference. And so we love to be a resource for our community. We tend to be, our tagline is that we're changing the way people feel about staffing because we're relationship focused and we're focused on freely sharing our expertise and knowledge. And obviously, we want to be people first. And that's the purpose of our time today, that it is absolutely about helping you to navigate this job market. There's so many contradictions that we hear that are about, oh, there's lots of jobs. It's a talent short market. And there's layoffs happening and there's people who are looking for jobs. So it's a really mixed bag of people. And we wanted to put something together to help you get some insider tips from some amazing experts. And that first expert is Erica Edwards. We're delighted to be partnering with Erica. And she's an HR professional and networking extraordinaire. If you follow her on LinkedIn, she's amazing. And her profession has evolved from her passion for educating others, which is a great partnership for us. We love working with Erica. And I have to put in a plug for our meeting. Erica and I met years ago at a Caribou, which is so interesting that that's where she's currently working. So that's pretty fun. Anyway, Erica values the ability to develop a reliable, strong, and diverse workforce. And she takes time to coach and provide feedback on the selection of the right candidate. She believes that DEI is a must in corporations, but now is the time to invest for employers heavily in inclusion. It's important to ensure that everyone who is willing and has the opportunity feels comfortable in this evolving workforce. I mean, as I said, it's a constantly evolving. So we're delighted to have you with us, Erica, and I'm going to turn it over to you as our moderator. Thank you for being with us.
Why, thank you so much, Mary. I just love when you do such a fabulous job at introductions. Well, welcome everyone. I'm so excited to have you here for the first of two sessions for job seekers. If you have not registered already for the second session that we'll be hosting on February 1st, don't forget to do that right away. We'll make sure to drop that link in the chat. So a couple of quick notes as you see me pointing down, look at the bottom. I'm just going to go ahead and have you navigate over to the closed caption if you would like to have the words come on the screen. As she noted, I'm all about inclusion. Make sure you go ahead and get that activated at the bottom. Also, we will have our Q&A icon that you'll see at the bottom of this window, and this is where you will enter all of your questions. So you go ahead and enter your questions in there, and then we will get those answered for you. Now, let's take a moment to introduce ourselves. Mary has already introduced me. So I would like for you to take that time to introduce yourself, first name in the chat, first name, and then tell me a little bit of, where you're joining from and what is the weather like where you are at. All right. I see some. I have. Hello, Melissa. Welcome, welcome. Peter, welcome. Carrie, welcome. Awesome. All right. Well, as you are continuing to come into the room, I'll continue forward. The last 15 minutes of the webinar will be reserved for your questions. So like I said a little bit earlier, we ask that you add your questions for the panelists to the Q&A function. You still are able to do chat, but if you have specific questions, get those entered into the Q&A section. This will help us stay organized as well. Now, that brings me to the introductions of our expert panelists who are so graciously sharing their lunch hour with us. Thank you so much, and hopefully you have some coffee close by. I have mine. First up, we have Leah. Leah Hickerson. So glad to have you here. Is the
Thank you for
director.
having me.
You're welcome. Leah is the Director of Talent Acquisition and Contingent Workforce for Securian Financial. She is a results-driven leader with expertise in talent acquisition, learning and development, and change management, supporting a variety of businesses within the retail and financial services industry. Leah leads with strong values in authenticity and transparency and trust, which I love those values. She believes people do their best work when they bring their full selves every day and empower people to make those decisions and are encouraged to help them reach their full potential. Please help me welcome Leah.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Makosa Taylor. Makosa. All right. Hello. Makosa is a seasoned professional with over 15 years of expertise in the event management, learning and development, and marketing project execution. When I say project, she projects and works all the way with a lot of projects as well. With a master's in education, Makosa's forte lies in her exceptional organizational and implementation skills, making her the go-to expert for both virtual and in-person events. She's absolutely passionate about developing people, and her background in HR has equipped her with a unique blend of talent acquisition, employee engagement, and organizational development capabilities. Please help me welcome Makosa. All right. Next, we have Justin. Justin Taramina, hailing from the Chicagoland area. Justin is a senior talent acquisition professional for Caribou Coffee with a master's in business administration from Minnesota State University, Mankato. In the talent acquisition field, Justin focuses on a variety of areas, including industries from manufacturing to retail, finance, IT, HR, supply chain, campus recruitment, and more. Please help me welcome Justin Taramina.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for, like I said earlier, devoting your time. Let's get started with the questions. So the first topic we're going to cover today, we're going to talk a little bit about creating a more strategic job search. We want to make sure that we are finding value out of that and improving that outcomes. So Leah, I'll direct this one over to you.
Sure.
As the Director of Talent Acquisition for a large organization like Securian, what key strategies do you recommend for job seekers to identify and target the right opportunities?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm going to key in on one of the words that you said, and it's strategy. And it really is a strategy, right? Like, I think a lot of folks get caught up in, having their resume that's very focused on what the titles that they've done and the experiences that they've had, and then go to online job applications, which that is not wrong. That is part of a strategy, right? So those are just pieces of what a holistic search strategy could look like. And I would honestly recommend starting with yourself. So in order to know where you're building this strategy from, taking a look at what are the skills that I have? What are the skills that make me unique to me? What have I become known for in my experiences? What would my leaders say that they appreciate about me? And also gives me energy, right? Those are the things that you're going to show up in an interview later. You're going to take that first call and they're going to hear that passion in your voice. So thinking about that early in your strategy, I think is really important. Another beyond just online applications, which again, it's a necessary evil, I guess you could say, but is expanding your network. So are you putting yourself in places where you will meet people that will connect you to that right role? I think there's lots of science out there that show that referrals, I think it's like 30 to 40%, you have an increase to 30, 40% chance if you're referred into a company. So how do you find those referrals? That can be anybody. I think people think like, oh, I need to know someone that works for Securian. I need to know someone who works for Caribou. But instead think about, sharing your search with where you are. That might be a church. It might be a place you volunteer. It might be an professional organization that you belong to. Those are all great opportunities to meet other people to say, hey, I'm looking for a new position, and it's kind of in this area is what I'm thinking. Who do you know that might need skills like I have? So that networking piece is super important. And then when you are applying, when you are following up on those leads, getting introduced to those people, those are opportunities, those are open doors, and you never know what that open door is going to lead you to. So it may not be like the hiring manager at XYZ company that you're really looking for, but think of that as an opportunity that'll open the door for future. So there are many pieces, right? It's a layered approach, and I think it just goes well beyond the application.
So true. And right now we are networking, right? I mean,
Yes.
in this room, we all had to meet each other by knowing someone, by connecting. And to all of our guests out there, you are now in this network. So you're meeting people, you're seeing the chat, get connected. So I love that. Thank you so much for calling that out.
Mhm.
Makosa, tapping into your expertise in consulting and HR, can you share some insights on tailoring the job search strategy to all the variety of career stages and or industries?
Yeah, I think it's really important. I'm going to piggyback off of what Leah said. It's really important to know who you are when you're walking into this job market, because people are looking for genuine human beings that are real and realistic. We're not looking for like the blase type person. We're looking for somebody that actually has a personality, a life. They're bringing some value to a company that we're hiring them for. And so when I think about how do you like position yourself in this market? How do you decide how you're going to show up in the market? I always think about it as a 3-layered approach. The first one, which is what Leah was saying, which is like network. Everybody knows somebody that works somewhere, right? And so whether you're at the grocery store or like walking around, do always ask that. The second thing that I think about as you are physically like looking at jobs, depending on the amount of money you're looking to make, how you show up in those spaces is going to look radically different. If you're going for an $80,000 job or a $150,000 job, there's some very large differences in how you need to approach that methodology in order to get that role. And so ask a lot of questions. I think that's the thing that saved me in consulting and meeting with different people. I ask a lot of questions, and it's okay to not know the answer. People are more than willing to help you. If you don't know, like if you've never been in an interview for a company with a Fortune 500 and you don't know what that looks like, ask questions, because I think that's the reality is people will often show up in our spaces. We're so excited to meet them. We're interviewing them. You made it past the final thing and they get there and they don't know how to do it. And at that point, we can't teach you in that moment, right? And so to begin to say, ask people that have interviewed for the company before, ask people like what the interview process looks like. Ask people that have just got hired there, find them on LinkedIn and send them a message and say, tell me what was the best thing that you learned in your interview process? What was one of the things that really stood out to you that was really important to know when I was interviewing with this manager? Asking questions is going to just get you way further than you trying to figure it out on your own. And the final thing is don't lie about who you are. Right. And so lots of times people show up in these spaces wanting to get a job and they're like, I just want to work for a good company and I want to make some money. Right. But the way that this job market is, they're looking for something special. And if you're showing up as yourself and you are proud of who you are in yourself, and you're not making excuses, if it's not a good fit, it just isn't a good fit. And that doesn't mean anything against you. That is just who you are as a person. And so it's not just about getting a job to get a job. It's also thinking, in this job, can I show up and be my best self? And can I do this and still keep my values? So those are a couple of the things that I would say are helpful, but
Wow.
ask a lot of questions.
So true.
Absolutely. And that's why we're here. We ask a lot of questions, and you're always being interviewed, even just meeting someone, the cashier, or walking down the street or whatsoever. You're always, have your 30-second elevator pitch ready for those conversations. So, getting back into that topic of application. So, we're going to move over into application and resume. How we're going to be able to increase that response rate. We've kind of put ourselves out there. We're looking to bring holistic person. Justin, in your experience as a recruiter for an employer of choice, what are some common mistakes that you see job seekers make on their resumes and/or applications that could have hindered their chances of being considered?
Yeah, and from personal experience too, right? Applying to my first roles, upon receiving a degree, right? Just kind of spraying and praying, right? Hoping that one's going to stick, and not doing the extra, right? Reaching out to people and having those conversations. I think one thing that I want everybody to understand of us on this call is we're all your biggest supporters. We're your biggest cheerleaders. We want you to be the person, right? When we have the conversation, we want to hire you. We want you to do well. And so reaching out to somebody prior to even having that first conversation or even submitting an application, figuring out who that recruiter is going to be and getting some additional details is really going to help you overall. But the other thing too is I think people don't really understand the difference between what a resume does for you and what you're supposed to do in that interview, right? A resume or an application is just supposed to be that selling point, right? Here's my document. Here's why I'm great. And you're supposed to be able to step into the interview and then expand on top of that, right? And I think one thing that people don't do an exceptional well job sometimes, and I think it takes some training. I think I need some training on it still, is selling ourselves. We don't like talking about ourselves. That's one of human nature's biggest issues is we all struggle talking about who we are and why we are who we are. And it kind of goes back to your core values and how you've been able to be successful in your career. Putting some metrics onto a resume to prove that, you have driven results, right? Maybe you've increased 30% of sales profit within your organization within the last year, right? Or maybe you're able to hire X amount of applicants over the next year and retain 90% of them, right? Those are key metrics that get you to that next step. But the last thing I wanted to touch on was you have an audience, right, that you're talking to with an application or a resume, right? Initially, it might be one of us on this call. It might be a recruiter. Additionally, it's a hiring manager. It's a hiring team. It's a company behind it as well. So understanding that company's core values, that company's mission, what they're trying to achieve year over year, and tailoring their resume. Maybe a company's in a big growth pattern right now, and tailoring your resume and how you've been able to help an additional company grow is going to put you ahead of somebody who maybe have forgotten to put that on a resume or application.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much. Those are really great tips on, what you should do as you are working through that resume. Makosa, what about career changes? How would you advise that they optimize the resume and or the application? Give us some strategies, that can improve their chances of being considered, less experience, non-traditional, traditional. What do you think?
Yeah. I think it's really important to think about, some of us have been in working for people and for a really long time. And so sometimes it's better to have what I call a career resume, where you are sharing your strengths and it's very easy to see those strengths. And so when you think about career, you think about what are some things that are really common across all the jobs that I've ever done, right? I'm highly organizational. I actually speak across the enterprise if you're talking from one department to another. These are things that that are what we call transferable skills. But sometimes when people are so focused on the very last job that they forget that they've done some of these things. And so, we look at a resume, and that I always think about it as a dating profile. You want to give just enough information that people want more. You don't want to give all of your secrets, just enough information that people want to know more. And so when you sometimes maybe hear us as recruiters saying things like, we don't want to look at 5 pages, because that's what you would never show up on a date and give them a whole book and say, here's my life, right? Think of that in the same aspect. You want to give people on a resume enough information that they think that you can meet the job. You also want to match the skill set. So you don't want to just be applying for any job, right? If you've never done the item, like you don't just want to put that in there and hope that you're going to get something. There is something to be said about making sure that the transferable skills that you have, networking, maybe it's business organization, maybe it's change management because you work through a bunch of different implementations, whatever that might be, that skill set is actually highlighted on there. Simpler the better, cleaner the better. I love a great resume, and I remember resumes that are really put together well. And so it is like the introduction to a company. And so I don't, every job that I've ever had, I'm the one that's looking through the resume. There is no ATS, it's me. I am combing through resumes because I want to know and I want to see people. And I don't know, everyone can answer that very differently, but the ATS thing that we hear all the time, that's not really what's happening. It's me sitting down 9 to 5, looking through each resume, checking to see if they meet the basic skills. I have about, 30 seconds, maybe, to get to know you. And so I want to be able to very clearly understand what you're doing and what you're looking for. And if you match my skill set. And that's really like when I think about transferring skills or any of those things, I think about a career resume.
Wow, that's really great points. And even 30 seconds, I mean, sometimes we only have 6 seconds. So we really are looking for those key points right away, moving things to the top, moving some of the things that I would say, Justin, like, and Leah, what are some of the things that we probably have seen evolve from kind of the traditional resumes to where we are in 2024? Leah, I want to put that question to you. And then Justin, I would love for you to follow up on it.
Yeah, I think the storytelling component is a little bit different, right? I think traditionally you would look at like, okay, how many years of experience, how much tenure at this job, and as folks transitioning into new industries, especially the last few years, right? We've seen a lot of movement in the job market. People aren't staying 25 years as often anymore. It certainly happens, but it's not uncommon for people to move around to gain the skills that they want and are looking for to grow their career. So that storytelling is really important to go beyond just like the titles that you've had. What do you offer to a company? So just like Makosa was saying, what are those transferable skills? If I have experience with project management, as an example, how can I apply all of those skills that you've learned on one of your top projects into the role that you're applying for? You have to storytell that. Like you have to put those pieces together for your employer. Don't assume that they're going to say, oh, well, she worked as a project manager here, or this person's never worked in a project management titled position. I don't see it. I'm moving on. Right? You have to tell that story. You have to showcase, but I am a project manager. I just wasn't called a project manager, just as one example, right? So I think, that storytelling piece, you're not there to tell that story. Or, you got to get in the door first, right? So making that obvious in 10 to 30 seconds is not easy, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Go right ahead.
And not that too much more on top of that, but I think that's definitely an insecurity for people on resumes, right? The jumping from job to job recently, right? Maybe only staying one place from year to year. And I want people to understand that we understand too, but it's also one thing I've noticed is people are starting to be a little bit more vulnerable on resumes by saying, I took a break, right? Maybe, you were so fortunate to have a child, or maybe you just took a break from work in general. You went back to school. And putting that on a resume versus not putting on a resume is going to benefit you that much more. We want to understand that whole storytelling piece, like Leah said. So that's just the additional call out I had.
Wow, really good. It takes me back to cover letters. Oh, I'm so sorry. Go right ahead. It sounds like it's covered. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just going to add one more thing to that part of it. I think also hiring a professional to help you with your resume. I am not good at writing my own resume, and I don't know how the rest of you are, but I struggle highlighting myself. And so I have told people time and time again, I hired a person to help me write my resume the first couple times because I didn't know how. I'm not naturally walking around being like, I'm awesome at this. You know what I mean? And sometimes you need another person to disseminate those items and what's important. Because sometimes what we think is important is not necessarily important to someone like a recruiter like me. But I think inviting people into the process of our resume and asking a lot of questions of people around us, like, what do you know me for? What do people come to me for? What am I getting a phone call at night? What are my friends asking me for? Those normally are going to lie by those like finite lifetime skills that you have, whether you're a project manager or not. So if you're the organizational person, having people look at your resume, which is terrifying, but good, and also asking for help, like asking a professional resume writer, going and talking to a coach, even working with someone like at Advent who can like kind of format and tell you how to like put a resume and what resumes in those fields look like. That is half the battle because we do read through them, but if they're really not the job, I can't justify it because I have to justify it to a manager. And so if they can't get the story, it's very hard for them to like move past all the amazing things that we see. They have to be able to see that story in people's resumes within the first like fourth of the resume,
Right.
very clearly for each job.
Yeah, it's that
Great.
partnership, right, between candidate and recruiter at the end of the day, right? We're working together, not working against each other.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that input. And this would, lead us into personal branding, right? In that hiring process, bringing your whole self, knowing that titles are different, but how do you transfer them into what you are looking to do? Leah, in your opinion, what does personal branding mean in the context of job seeking, and how can candidates develop this strong brand for themselves?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is about really being authentic to who you are. I know we've said this a couple different ways, but really knowing who you are at your core, what you're good at, what you bring, what your values are. So then you can line those up in a quick 30 seconds if you have that opportunity, or if you meet someone, you want them to know, what is that lasting impression, and that's what a personal brand is, right? What is someone going to walk away from after your conversation or after meeting you? Are you exuding confidence? Are you being purposeful in what you're sharing? Are you being professional? Doesn't mean not to be who you are, but are you being professional? Is that the impression that you're getting? So how are you showing up, right? That's how you want to really think about what are those opportunities and how can you really make a lasting impression. But I think time and time again, I see folks that try to, like Makosa said this earlier, like, don't lie. Don't try to be someone you think a company wants for that job. If you are who you are and you're showcasing what you're good at, that will come through and someone will be able to see that. If you're trying to force it and trying too hard, that is also noticed too. So important to think about what your employment brand or your personal employment brand, what your personal brand is, but also like it really is about that authenticity too.
That's so good. Absolutely. I do remember seeing a quote that recruiters, we have really long memories. We really remember, those experiences, those resumes, and the community of, recruiting, and especially here, it's really small. It seems to be really big, but we do tend to network, like we just shared with each other. And so, Makosa, that leads me into your experience of personal branding. How does that contribute to long-term career success beyond the initial hiring process?
I think I'm going to define a word because I think this is helpful in like explaining personal branding. I think integrity is everything for people, like saying what we mean, meaning what we say, and doing it the way we said we're going to do it. Every time you enter a job, you enter into this like integrity thing. And when we show up and do the job that we do, people are like, who's really good at that? Leah is good at that. And that's how that network builds, right? Like as you're doing the job. I think when you think about personal branding, people want to hear the straight story. I went to college, I did this, and then I did this. But people also want to hear like the broken pieces. My background is all over the place, but it's taught me things in each individual step. And it doesn't mean that because my background is not consistent, like someone that went to high school, then went to college, and then got an internship, like there's room enough in the world for all of us. And sometimes that means that it might be a very specific company. Like there's certain companies that are just not going to be a good fit for me, for my personal brand, for who I am and how I show up. I'm a little more casual, so I'm not going to go maybe to like something like a Wells Fargo, because that's just not a good fit for me. It doesn't mean that I can't work there. It just means that in the way that I show up every day and how I work and how I want to work, I'm looking for companies and I'm that match my brand. And so to think about yourself, like, would I buy myself off of the shelf? Right? Like if you go to Target and then you see those end caps and then they stop you and you're like, I need that, even though I don't. Like, would you pick yourself up off the shelf and buy yourself? And that's the question that like my coach asked me. She goes, what would be special about you that you want to buy in yourself? And that normally is where like the branding really shows up, because the difference between Leah, me, Erica, and even Justin is how we brand ourselves. And each of our companies that we work for really valued how we showed up at the table. And that's the difference between just showing up and having all the background and us hiring somebody that we feel like is a best fit for the company, because they know who they are, they say what they mean what they say, and we're going to watch them do it the way they said they're going to do it. And so I think that's really important, like in that space.
It's so nice to hear that. Yeah, absolutely. It's so great to hear that being said from a recruiting HR, because it makes you feel like, what? We have a choice. Like job seekers have a choice to choose where they're going to go and bring their whole selves, and they can actually turn down a company. Like what? So it's so empowering to hear you say that, Makosa. And then also thank you, Leah, for your expertise in it. Justin, what advice do you have for candidates, seeking those values, alignment with organizations that they are targeting?
Yeah, I think it ties in everything we've been saying, right? Defining your own values, similar to what Makosa was just saying and Leah was saying as well. But, I feel like looking at the organizational level is so surface level, right? There's so much more to dig into. Sure, your values of who you are, right? Who I am, I'm a giver, right? I need to work with a company who is going to let me unapologetically give each and every day, help people find their whys, support me, but also allow me to be myself, right? Erica knows, just because, I work with her very closely. I wear my emotions on my face. That might not mold well at other companies, right? I'm a very passionate person in the work that I do, but where I am, it does, right? So core values are a start, but I also say take it a level deeper and start connecting with the people who are actually at that company. Learn from the current employees, because you will get very truthful, authentic answers from people who are living it each and every day within that organization, right? They'll tell you how it is. People aren't shy. I know that as well. But then take it a step further than that, right? I'm a firm believer you work for a boss and not a company, right? I'm very fortunate, not trying to brown nose, but very fortunate to work for Erica, right? She values the same things I value. We have a lot of fun on a daily basis. But I think that's so important. And how you get down to that, right? One thing I was looking for is a leader that's going to empower me and allow me to grow and develop and just do my own thing, right? You got to talk to the people that are at the company too. As you're going through the interview steps, ask some targeted questions. Ask the hiring manager straight up, how do you empower your employees? Let them give you an answer and say, hey, it would be fantastic too if I can connect with X, Y, and Z on your team as well, and ask them the same question. Get on Glassdoor, get on LinkedIn, get on Indeed, read the ratings, read the reviews, but don't stop at the surface level. What are the 5 core values of that company? Continue to dig, continue to dig, continue to dig, because that's when you'll really try and find out, am I the right fit for them, and are they the right fit for me? And like Erica and Makosa and Leah have said, you can say no. You are in a job seeker market. It is a job seeker driven market right now. We know that. We're trying to sell ourselves to you as much as you're trying to sell yourself to us. Empower yourselves, take ownership of your career path, and do the things that are going to be right for you.
Wow, taking ownership. So you're saying that we can say no. So does that mean saying even negotiating salaries or wages? So I want to definitely jump right into that, because you talked about buying, will I buy myself off the shelf? Which that is such a great, someone should just drop that in, because that's a great gem right there. Empowering, adding that to your toolbox of asking that question, how do you empower your employees? If they can't answer that, we probably should, start thinking a little bit more. So yeah. salaries, wages. I want to drop that in there. Like, Makosa, what did you say, negotiating that? Is that
Um,
possible?
yes, I think it's like one of the most interesting things as a recruiter when you sit on the other side of the table and you recognize that people say no a lot. And you're like, wait, what? It's really common to have a minimum of 2 no's before we get a yes. And so I think when I was sitting on the other side of the table, we as recruiters, we want you to do the best that you can, but we can't tell you what to do. Does that make sense? And so we're like, please ask me more questions. But we can't actually say that in negotiation because it's your decision if you're okay with what's going on. And so know that when we're coming to you the very first time, it's our initial offer. It's not the final, it's normally an initial offer. And so to really think about it like a conversation and not so much, if I don't say yes, I'm not going to get this job. We've already done all the hard work. You've met our whole team, which is hard for us to like go backwards from that because our people have a really hard time forgetting you, right? So if they like someone and they say, we want to hire them, we're in this to try and help you the best that we can, but you do need to know your market. I'm a huge TikToker. I love TikTok. I am hunting for companies all the time. You learn a lot about people are willing to talk about good and bad things. And so when you're looking at these companies and you're trying to negotiate salaries, you're trying to understand things, do the Glassdoor, do some like due diligence in your area. If you're over asking, we're going to tell you you're over asking because I have no, I'll be like, I'm sorry, that is not the world we live in. We can't pay you $450,000.
Right,
We'll
right.
be straight laced with you, but I never think it's bad to pause when you get an offer, to take 1 to 2 days to respond if you're not fully sure, to ask more questions, to negotiate. If you can't get more money, ask for other benefits, ask for vacation time, ask for like, is there any other thing you can help me with on this part of it to help me get a total compensation package that meets the needs for me and my family? And that's the word we talk about is total compensation, not just my salary. What other things can happen if I work for this company if I can't get the salary to move? So
Absolutely. Wow. Definitely great tips. And that's the reason why we're here for this first session. I hope someone is asking these questions in the chat and wanting to know total compensation. Like, how does that apply to a person that doesn't need benefits or want it or don't want it? So much. So I really hope that someone's putting that in the chat and want to know more about it. So we'll have time a little bit later. Let's move on to the interview preparation now. We found the companies, we did our, a check on ourselves. We are looking at those transferable skills. Now we need to prep. Leah, for you, what would you say would be the most common interview methods that organizations use today? And what is the best way for candidates to prepare for that interview?
Yeah, I would say one of the most common is situational based questions, right? So give me an example of a time where, what did you do? What was the outcome, right? That's kind of what a recruiter or company is looking for of, that past behaviors will predict, future successes. So how do you articulate that? And I'll talk about a couple pitfalls and first before I kind of get to, things to highlight because it is tricky, right? You're trying to answer the direct question, but at the same time, you're trying to highlight your skills. And sometimes those questions kind of have a negative tone to them, right? Like, tell me a time where you handled a difficult leader. How did you handle it? What was the result? And so but at the same time, you're trying to highlight what you do and what you would do through a specific example. So one of the pitfalls I would say I see candidates make sometimes is over preparing very specific questions. And if you over prepare for the 25 questions that you could get asked, you won't necessarily be able to pivot and make connections on the fly as easily, right? So sometimes you can actually over prepare. So the advice that I've given for years is to pick your 5 most complicated, messy, things didn't go great, but you did you persevered through it. What are those like really meaty examples of where you had to learn a lot of skills. You had to showcase what you can do. And if you just focus on those, like 5 examples, I like 5. If you ask, 5 different recruiters, you're going to say like, more or less. I
Mhm.
think 5 is a good number. Then no matter what you get, you can answer the question because you've really gone deep in your 5 examples. So that's how you can kind of showcase like those broken pieces that Makosa talked about, like every heartache that you've gone through in your career. I mean, some hard days, right? We all have really hard days at work. And I'm like, well, this is going to be an interview answer someday. Like I
Mhm.
just worked myself through a lot, a lot. So think about those opportunities where a project went off the rails, but you took a moment, you collaborated, you got it back on track. That's a win. That's what employers want to see because projects go off the rails. Not
Mhm.
like this perfect canned answer of like, here's here's exactly what I did. It's more about I took this thing that was really difficult, really hard, really complicated. Here's how I thought about it. Here's how I did it. So an employer can see how you work, how you tackle problems as they come up. And then here's the results that came up. And I think sometimes candidates will think of it has to be some big result, like I got promoted at the end of it. A big result could be like I got it back on track. That's a big result.
Mhm.
It could be, I convinced someone that they were, maybe not looking at the whole big picture, and that changed the momentum, or that changed the shift in the project. Those can be big results, big and small, right?
Yeah.
So not to just get stuck on, that big outcome at the
Right.
end. That
Absolutely.
was a lot, but
No.
kind of passionate about that one.
No, that's really good, Leah. It was like as you were speaking, I was thinking about like collecting a cookbook and just kind of putting all of the different
Right.
recipes and ingredients in there. So you want to start building that book of recipes, and
Right.
you can even start to build them in, in school. Justin, you finished your, went back to school, finished your master's and so forth. You were probably adding to your cookbook, but what advice do you have for someone that is not currently in that like job market, but they're in school trying to prepare for handling these curveball questions?
Yeah, 100%. And, I think the tough thing about curveball questions is we live in a world right now of vulnerability and transparency. It is more than okay to say, I don't have an answer right now. Can we come back to that? Or trying to go back to what Leah said, your 5 bullet points that you always lean back on, and try to tie that back in with some logic to that role that you're applying for. It's also okay too if you get to the end of the interview and you still don't have an answer, to follow up after the interview if you've had some more time to talk, and just send us an email with your answer too. I've had that happen
Mhm.
multiple times to me. And somebody that does that, one thing that it tells me the most is you actually care about this process. You care about this role. You care about trying to join this company. And that's all we can ask for. It goes back to what Makosa said in the very beginning of this webinar. We're looking for genuine people who want to learn, want to soak up information. And so just being open and honest about everything when it comes to questions you may or may not have an answer to is more than okay. And if you don't have experience in it, say, hey, I don't have experience in that space yet, but if I was put in a situation like that, here are some possible things I would do to help de-escalate or improve, whatever it may be.
Absolutely. Wow, that's really,
Right.
really great. Anyone else, want to kind of flow with the next, thing with that. I mean, I'm just really excited about it because we have so many different people on the call right now. They are, either pivoting or going into their career or just interviewed multiple times in the same company for different jobs because they want to get there. It's so any tips and tricks to kind of final close on that? Because I'm gonna start with you because yeah, I definitely know you've probably seen, especially coming from bigger, larger companies, people trying to move up
Yeah.
in that company.
Yeah, I would just say be your authentic self. I mean, I know we say that a lot, but we just see a lot of inauthenticity, and we're like, please just be yourself because we chose you because you looked amazing, and now you're being weird. Like not in a mean way, but just like be yourself, you know. Um, and don't try to overspeak. Like it's okay. Like we're not. Our expectation is not perfection. Our expectation is the ability to learn, grow, and understand who we are. That's what we're looking for in those moments. Ask for a lot of help And when you ask for help, we're all going to have different answers. Leah is going to respond to recruiter questions differently based off of where she is and what she's learned. I have never been a traditional path, so I don't take traditional methods when I look for jobs. And so when you're trying to figure out who do I follow and who is the best recruiter to hear what I need to be doing, I say find somebody that normally is going to be similar to your personality and similar to your background. If you're looking to work at Amazon, you know, like find someone like Holly Lee, who is really good and is a bar raiser and knew what she was doing, right? That's a great person to follow if you want to work for Amazon. Or like find someone that has the same personality as you. Like, and not everything that we say is golden. Just keep what makes sense, wash away what doesn't make sense, because sometimes we'll say things and it's because it's very specific to our team, or
Yeah.
like we just know our people really well. Our job is to know our managers well and to help them find the best candidates. And so we don't have this massive amount of control over recruiting. We are really there to facilitate that transition from our managers to finding great talent. And we really go back and forth in between the managers and in between the recruiting team. And so sometimes it's out of our hands. We do the best that we can, but to know that it's not necessarily like we don't want you to be there. We of course we do. We want them to find the perfect fit and we want you to win. And so just to be aware of like, it's a moment by moment thing. Not everything that you hear is going to always make sense. Take what makes sense, keep it, whatever doesn't, wash away. And then I always just say, like, do I want to buy myself? Like, that's really for myself. I do that. Do I want to buy what I'm selling in this thing? Does it sound like something that I'd want to bite off on? And I'm a practicer, so I have to practice. I've never been able to go in an interview without practicing or having a spreadsheet to the right. Like, that is just how I interview. So everybody
Love that.
appears at this. And so just use your strengths in that.
Love that. Love it. I have to move on to rapid fire, right? So in 3 bullet points, if you could say 3 words or less, or 3 quick bullet points, what is the most important tip for job seekers? And I'm going to go out of order on this side of my screen. So Justin, rapid fire question, 3 words or less, 3 bullet points. What you got?
Yeah, embrace the process, embrace the hurt, embrace the good, have fun with it, meet people, and use every opportunity you can to network with as many people as you can.
Wonderful. Leah, what you got really quickly?
Resilient, stick with it, don't give up, ask for help. People want to help you, and be yourself.
Love it. And
That's more than
Makosa.
3 words, but
Oh, I also said 3 bullet points too. So,
there
you
go,
know,
there you go.
I should, people, hopefully they're getting these nuggets. Go right ahead, Makosa.
My thing is, if a door closes, it doesn't mean it's always closed. And so if they don't pick you, it doesn't mean that you're not ever going to get picked. And so continue to foster those relationships. That's what I would say. Never stop just because a door is closed. But just continue to just keep trying, because you never know. You never know.
Wonderful. But if that door closes, do you go back and try to open it like a week later? You think that if another job
Yeah.
opens up?
Give yourself a month, and reach back out. Give yourself a solid month before you reach back out, because sometimes we can't get people to think about new things yet. And so sometimes they need a little bit of time to see what they have, and then they make different decisions. And so, yeah, it's really in that manager's hands a lot of times when we're sitting there. It's not us, it's in the manager's hands and what they prefer and what they want. And so sometimes a month later, do reach out and say, hey,
All right.
I interviewed you, great. So
I probably already answered some of the questions in the Q&A, but now we're into the Q&A questions, right? So I want to just kind of go through. I have quite a few, and I'll try to get through as many as I can in this next 15 minutes, actually in the next 10 minutes. From Stephen, put down, what if your previous roles have no quantifiable metrics? What if everything you do is only quantifiable? Like, how do you create the star points for that? Wants to pick up on that one.
I could maybe do that, because I think anything can be quantifiable even if it's not in work. So
I was thinking
like,
too.
it doesn't have to be a physical job that you have. So if you coached a baseball team and you organized that team, you created a training, you emailed all those things, that's marketing, that's organizational structure and change, that's communications. Like, People just want to know that you started something, you finished something, and how you got there. And so if you don't
Like
have
you
the
made an
numbers, don't make,
impact, right? How did you make
yeah,
the
don't make,
impact?
Mhm.
Yeah.
yep,
Wonderful.
yeah.
Yeah. And I want to this is a really good one because we touched on salaries and someone asked, how do you deal with the states that do not require salaries to be posted? Kind of is a huge stumbling block for this particular person. You don't want to just keep applying to the jobs if you don't know what those salary expectations are. And Justin, I want to pose this one to you.
Yeah. It goes back to what we said in the beginning, right? Ask the question. Ask the question, right? If you want to know if you're even within the range. Most companies will give you a range. I know one standard practice we have here at our company is it's a topic that honestly I bring up at the end of interviews or even in the beginning. And I'm very transparent with my candidates. I say, hey, here's where we're at. I don't want to put you in a financial situation where you don't feel comfortable, right? Really good recruiters will do that. But if they're not, if you haven't heard the answer yet, don't leave that first interview or follow up with an email without knowing that answer. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to waste each other's time. And it's an always okay answer or question to ask.
Yeah, I have to agree on that one. In HR, it's tough to talk about. So I want to put for metrics in an interview, especially when you manage the talent process. So talent review succession. How should you address this, Leah? What would be you want to grab this one? What would kind of be your way of looking at that?
Like I just want to make sure I understand, like, how are you measuring the talent? Like if you were managing a talent process or just like in general? Sorry, I can't see the question.
Oh, yeah. It says, especially when you manage the talent processes. So really, it's not numbers like KPIs are
Oh,
not
sure.
attached to it. So
Yeah,
how do
I
you
got you.
address that?
Yeah, no, I got you. I think like Makosa said, it's, what did you do and how did you get there? What was that outcome? And if you can talk about what you impacted, it might not be a number. Maybe it's like you established a process that didn't exist before, right? That's a great thing, that's a good thing to highlight. Maybe it was, I took this mishmash of policies and procedures and organize them in a way. That's an outcome. It might not be a percentage increase on, year over year results. It doesn't necessarily have to be that. It can just be what impact did I make?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely great. That's really good. And the impact, and then it takes me to this really great question that just came up. What are your recommendations? So different recommendations for job seekers. We talked about inclusion, diversity. What about age? Age, over 60, over 50, extensive amount of experience. What are some things that you could give advice on that for ageism? And
I can
go ahead.
take that one. Or go ahead, Makosa.
I was just gonna say, I don't really care about age in my space. Like, to be completely honest, I'm looking for a qualified candidate. And so I think that sometimes it might feel that way. Or it might be like, hey, that place only hires really young people. But when we're presenting candidates to managers or whoever we are, we're giving them a full scope. And really that decision comes down to the manager. And so if you're looking at a place and you're like, I haven't seen anybody that's older than this age that works there, that might not fit your values. Does that make sense? And it might not fit what you want. And so paying attention to what Justin said, just looking online, looking on LinkedIn, looking and seeing like what are the company photos look like? How many people are actually there? What are the ages of the people there? That is always going to give you the right step into the right spaces that have that inclusive aspect of it. But for the most part, in the Fortune 500 world that I work in, age is not the thing. We're looking for ability to translate skills and ability to explain their story.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Well,
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, right? Like pulling out those skills. So over your tenure, you likely, if you think about what are the skills that you're really good at, but they also give you energy, right? And then summarizing how you've used those skills. Again, it's part of that storytelling. You don't necessarily need to list every single job you've had in your tenure. You can summarize what do you want someone to walk away from seeing your great tenure that you have, that's a benefit that you have all of these skills. So if you position it that way, instead of lists of, roles and jobs, and, it might help.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah. Go
And
ahead, Justin.
just to jump in there, I had gone through this recently with a close family member, and was dealing with a very similar thing. And the recommendation I gave was don't let people make assumptions on you, right? Don't let them
Mhm.
judge a book by its cover, right? Be vulnerable about when you see yourself being done with work, right? How many more years do you think you have left in yourself? Do you have 10, 15 years, right? Because people always look at the hypothetical age, 65, maybe it's 55, maybe it's 70, as that retirement age. Be honest about who you are and where you see your career going, and maybe you don't plan on doing anytime soon. And in that first interview or first contact, or maybe just reaching out before you even get your application in, is an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, really good. Speaking on that one, reaching out, what about cover letters? You know, do recruiters really have time for cover letters anymore? Or does it like kind of give you a step up or a step down if you write one? Because what do you think of that one?
Depends on the company and depends on the manager. I have some
Okay.
managers that could care less about cover letters. They're just like, show me the resumes. And then I have other ones that put high amounts of value on a cover letter. And so what I always say is read your cover letter. We read through them when we have to. So make sure that it's like talking about you. You've removed any template spaces. Like these are things that we kind of are scanning when we first get them. And so if I have a candidate that I think is good and like I see that, I'll call and be like, hey, I got your cover letter, but it doesn't look like you removed these template spaces. So like literally like look through them and make sure that what you're writing this cover letter for is for the job you actually. And so if it's not, if it says project management on the cover letter, but you're applying for a business analyst, I I don't know what story you're trying to tell me. I don't know what you want me to do. And so when I have extra questions, I go to the cover letter. That's
Love
how I
it.
see it. If I have extra questions and I'm like, this is interesting, I don't understand this, I will then go to the cover letter. And that's like my second space. So I always say, throw in a cover letter. It's never going to hurt you. And
Yep.
it'll give you an opportunity to share a little bit of something else above and beyond. And that's where you can put like, hey, I love working and I don't see myself retiring anytime soon, you know?
Right,
And
right.
I see myself in the field for the next 10 years. That's
Oh my
Exactly.
goodness. Mary, I think we could just have a whole nother 30 minutes of this. These questions
Really
are
good.
phenomenal, but I know we can't get to all of them. But it's good that we have another session coming up. So Mary,
Yeah.
I will turn it right back over to you. And thank you so much to all of our panelists today and all of our participants. All right, Mary, bring us home.
Absolutely. Thank you guys. This is excellent stuff. And all of our participants today, it's been an amazing audience, and we have recorded the session. So we'll have that available, and we are tracking questions. I know we couldn't get to all of the questions, but we are, as Erica just said, doing a session 2 next week, February 1st. The link is in the chat. Susan just posted it there. So we encourage you to please join us again. It will be another great session. You guys, thank you so much to Makosa, Leah, Justin, and of course, Erica, our fabulous moderator. Thank you. I loved somebody said that they want to go to work for Caribou and how can they get in touch with you? I love that, right? Use the network, use these people, find us. I think Makosa said, find us on LinkedIn, right? Reach out to us. The other thing I would add, you guys, is that so many people are in that messaging mode, right? And you have to follow up if you don't hear back. That's my advice, because as one person, we cannot always follow up with every single person who reaches out to us. And I always appreciate someone staying really persistent, right, in their job search. Even if you think, well, I already messaged them last week, I don't want to bug them, find a right cadence and reach back. Right. But I know it's 1 o'clock. We're closing. Please, thank you all so much. And please register for our session 2. Thank you.